This is Rating Descending,
where we watch bonus episodes sometimes.
My name is Ebenezer Scrooge.
And I'm Mishanta Mishanta St. Claus. I did it. I figured it out.
Mishanta St. Claus. And tonight, we watched Santa Claus 3. Santa, aka Scott Calvin, is faced with double duty: how to keep his new family happy and how to stop Jack Frost from taking over Christmas. Let's watch.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
Michelle, 'tis the season to reflect on baby Jesus getting pinned up on a Christmas tree for our sins.
Well, here we are for Christmas. That's like Alex
Christmas.
Turner being Camila Cabello.
Have you thought enough about baby Jesus dying on a Christmas tree this season?
No, not really. It's not my religion. I don't begrudge anyone who has thought of it.
What is your religion? Have you thought enough about babies dying?
Does Misk make it? This is not the way. That's the way I expected this episode to go. Here, all right. That's the cut-in point.
You know what happened on Christmas Eve, right? Baby Jesus was born into the world, and then they robbed him. They snatched him, like the Lindbergh baby. And then they strung him up on a Christmas tree, and they were like, you're going to pay for your beliefs.
I can't
believe...
believe...
And that's why it's okay that Christians oppress people now, because baby Jesus died.
I can't believe that my surprise at this way of introing the episode totally let my brain skate by the fact that you're totally wrong about what Christmas's relationship to Jesus is. I was wondering when you were going to
pull me up on that.
Now, hang on a second.
And then baby Jesus hulked out of his tomb and ate a lot of chocolate. And that's the glory of Christianity, is it baby Jesus.
It's worth mentioning that for this Christmas-themed episode, all religions are welcome on Rating Descending.
Specifically ones that celebrate baby Jesus dying.
Ignore Abigail. Listeners, by this point, you're well used to ignoring Abigail. That's the real holiday tradition.
Michelle, I'm going to level with you. This festive season, I'm feeling pretty merry with it.
Yeah? You're feeling pretty merry?
I'm merry and I'm festive, and I'm not letting any Christmas film pass me by.
Yeah, I'm feeling festive, infested, festival, real itchy.
Yeah.
I've had problems in the bed with rashes.
Yeah. You're
so
covered with lice as we speak.
Oh, absolutely.
They're jumping off of you.
We're recording at your house instead, and I didn't tell you that is a big part of why.
Honestly, we're recording at my house for the first time ever because I have an enormous Christmas tree, and it's real, and I've never had a real one before in my life. And I have to say, I was like, I'm going to get a Christmas tree because I need to get my fucking head in the game. Nothing got my head further up that game's bussy than buying a real Christmas tree, because the smell of it, oh boy, I'm loving it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm loving it. It's a bit of maintenance. You got to water it, and apparently you have to saw the end off of it because it seals up. Yeah.
You've just got a tree in your home.
I do.
That's crazy. Those are outside creatures.
It did occur to me. I was like, I've never taken care of a full tree in my home. Again, delaying its death and trying to maintain it as best I can in a bucket of water.
There's no way to maintain it in this state? It's definitely going to die?
I could keep it in water for as long as I could, but I mean, it's a cut tree. I'm not planting it in soil. So
I don't know enough about how trees work versus small plants.
I don't either. You know, Tony told me last night that the reason that you have to cut the end off again when you buy it is that, like, it has a defensive mechanism where when it's cut, it starts to seal itself off. Right. That's why you could buy a tree, put it in water, and it just won't absorb anything because it's like already sealed itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
that's cool.
I didn't have the strength to saw the bottom off, so I just kind of made a bunch of gashes around the side of the stump. And then I told Tony, who knows a lot about trees clearly, and he said that wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
But it's still alive, Tony, so suck my festive dick.
Suck my festive... That's the...
Suck my merry cock, motherfucker.
Suck my merry cock, motherfucker. Tis the season.
Christmas. Cheers. We're sitting on my couch. We're drinking mulled wine.
Yeah.
It's like 28 degrees or some shit today, but we've got the aircon
surprisingly cool for an Australian Christmas.
100%. It's been a cold December.
Yeah.
Michelle, what have you ruminated on this festive season? Because I've thought a lot about baby Jesus.
Well, you see, I really like Christmas in general, right? I'm a big Christmas. I like when
best holiday. Holiday.
I like when holidays have a theme. Really, to be honest, it's why I like Halloween, even though a lot of Australians don't like it, versus Easter. You know, love love Christmas. Love that it's got a theme. I like the idea of giving more than the practical expense of it. You know, it's really cool. And also, there's tons of Christmas movies and shit. It's awesome. This Christmas,
it's awesome.
I had a situation where I was like, I might go fully bankrupt if I don't get this one job in time. And it, like, I was waiting on like something in the post to arrive first, and then there was going to have to be me actually editing it, and then I would have to wait for the turnaround of the money.
No, I know. I heard the whole story from God, but then he was like, you need to go down to earth as an angel and show Michelle what would happen if she was never born. And that's what we did. We spent the last 2 days, and I've been showing Michelle what the world would be like without her.
Why was everyone so much happier?
Remember our favorite line from It's a Wonderful Life of him saying, there's that classic beautiful line of, you want the moon, Mary? I'll put a big rope around it, I'll bring you the moon. And then he goes, and then you're going to swallow
the
it.
moon, Mary.
And the moonbeams are going to shine out of your fingers and your hair.
Yeah.
It's going to dissolve in your mouth.
And I still stand by a great bit is just, and he keeps on going. And then I'm going to take that lasso and I'm going to throw it around the sun and it's going to burn up, Mary. It's going to burn. And
everything's going to burn.
I'm going to grab my hands. I'm going to pluck Venus out of the sky, Mary. And then I'm going to put it into my eyes.
Mary was so patient with that man. If I was on a quiet, dark street with a man that started talking about eating a moon and letting it dissolve in his mouth, I'd be like, I have to go home now.
Okay, George, I'm going home.
I would like have the emergency dial button just open on my phone, ready to go. Just gripping my mace slowly. Sounds great, George.
In the 40s, you'd have your emergency phone.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. It was like a street phone and she'd already typed in it.
Payphone.
Yeah.
It's not a phone from now. This is 1985 we're talking about.
Why is it 1985 and not the 40s?
Because it's a street phone. Oh, I
they
guess
had
they
street
had street
phones
phones
in the 40s.
Yeah, they
right?
would.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up, Michelle. It's Christmas.
Yeah, okay.
All right?
I'm sorry. To finish off my story, I managed to get it all done over the last weekend, and then like the stars aligned and I got paid on Monday, and I was like, it's a Christmas miracle. I will not go broke. I'll be able to get people presents. And then now it's like right before Christmas, and I'm like, I have not thought about Christmas until today, and I'm very stressed.
So you haven't done your present shopping? No. Michelle.
Fortunately, one of the people who has fallen by the wayside is my darling girlfriend.
No, Brooke, who just took you on a lovely trip away for your birthday.
Yes.
You fucking...
Christmas presents for partners are hard. They're harder than birthday presents.
Brooke, I'm looking out for you, even if Michelle isn't.
I'm looking out for her. What the fuck?
Speaking of what the fuck.
Hey.
We watched the Santa Claus 3.
Well, we watched all of them.
We watched all of them.
Yeah.
Well, in preparation, we watched all of them. And technically, this is all of the Santa Claus films thingy, but I needed to zone in on one particular film.
Yeah.
And we did initially decide to do Santa Claus 3.
In particular, we were like, all right, we're doing a Christmas bonus. How about the Santa Claus 3? And then I watched all 3 of them, and you were like halfway through the 3rd one, and you texted me, is the first one weird too? What's it like? And I described it to you, and you were like, I gotta watch this.
Yeah. I started watching the first half of the 3rd one, and actually, the lore of this world is so intricate and dense that you do really need to watch all of them to fully grasp a lot of the emotional, weight.
I feel like
everything.
It's a great example of a movie where if you watch it without the pretext, you're like, surely I'm missing something. And then when you watch the pretext, you're like, not really.
To be fair, when I did go back and watch it, I was like, cool, everything I estimated about this franchise, I was right.
Yeah.
There isn't that much left to the imagination, but it was nice to go back and understand the rest of it. I'll say from the get-go, straight off the bat.
Yeah.
I thought the first one was fine.
The first one, okay, I'm so glad we're talking about this because we got to go through all of them, right? I even watched 1.5 episodes of the Santa Clauses, the series.
How was that?
Oh boy, we'll get rough. With the first one, like, it is the most like a movie, right? It is like, in some ways, I can understand why it's a studio movie that would have come out and made a bunch of money.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, is deeply strange.
Okay.
In every way. Like, it came out around the same time as the remake of Miracle on 14th Street or whatever.
Yeah.
Both of them are movies that are pretext on the real spirit of Christmas is legal documentation. Which is something that really bums me out about both of those movies.
Also, this must have come out, the first one came out in 1994.
That's when it
Christmas
came out.
1994. Like Michelle.
Oh, that's...
You were a Christmas 1994 baby.
I would have been 5 days old.
Oh my goodness.
Wowee.
Oh my God, imagine baby Michelle dying on a Christmas tree.
What?
I'm just thinking a lot about babies
Oh
right
my
now.
God.
I'm thinking a lot about...
Well, that
little
actually did
soft,
happen, but it was
fleshy
okay
babies.
because they came back 3 days later on Boxing Day.
Oh my God, you hulked out of the tomb.
I hulked out of the tomb.
God, I love the Bible. Just love it.
But that first one is such a deeply, deeply strange movie, which is part of why I love it. Because, like, that format of movie is typically... Oh, dad doesn't understand Christmas. He doesn't get it, but his child gets it. And then through this happenstance, through magic, he will learn. He's slowly turning into Santa to teach him the spirit of Christmas.
Yeah.
No. At the beginning of this movie, Tim Allen is pro-Christmas. He wants his kid to still believe in Santa. He's a toy maker. He's not a great dad, but he isn't a deadbeat dad.
Yeah.
And his strained relationship with his ex-wife is pretext on the fact that she and her now husband, Judge Reinhold, want their son to stop believing in Santa.
That is the strangest part of the film is Neil, the stepdad, insisting that this kid not believe in Santa.
Including, to skip ahead, the fact that like the apotheosis of the film is that they successfully take legal custody away from Tim Allen of the
Which
son,
is so sad.
because the son still believes in Santa.
So when I did not expect there to be a plotline about a man getting his visitation rights stripped from him because he thought he was Santa Claus. I was like, if I was his ex-wife and I had an ex-husband that genuinely I thought was having a mental break and thought he was Santa Claus, it would be a harrowing experience. It's not like a lighthearted, tonally, oh my God, that'd be so funny. It would be horrible.
Like, it feels like the fact that he believes that Santa is Tim Allen is just the cinnamon, and the real, like, cake that they're angry with is just that he believes in Santa at all.
Full stop.
Like, the whole plot of the movie is, like, him getting called in to, like, parent-teacher things and, like, all these people going, like, your son still believes in Santa, and that's fucked up. What's wrong with you that your child believes in Santa?
I will say, this is, how many times have we encountered Tim Allen now?
Oh, boy.
He was in Captain Zoom, was it
He was in Zoom.
He was Captain Zoom. He was in The Shaggy Dog.
He was in Shaggy Dog, yeah.
And now he's been in Santa Claus 3.
Yeah.
So that's 3 occurrences of Tim Allen, at least.
But bonuses are in like a middle ground with these little star things.
2.5.
Yeah,
is where he's
2.5.
I'm just going to maintain what Claude once said. Seems like a great guy to chat to.
I don't know. I think your opinion might change after the Santa Clauses.
Right.
Right. A deeply intolerable man.
He seems, I don't know, have you seen that mugshot of him after he got arrested in like 1981 for cocaine trafficking?
No, I haven't seen Tim Allen's mugshot.
Oh, dude, you should see him. He looks a bit like a porn star. He's got the big stash. He looks underweight. Let me find it for you. But he was like, he had obviously a coke problem in the early 80s, and he was like trafficking cocaine through an airport, and he got arrested, and he went to jail for like 3 years.
Now I remember you talking about this. Yeah. When I watch the Santa Claus, I'm like, that guy was trafficking cocaine. When I see that mugshot, I'm like, that guy was trafficking cocaine. For sure. Yeah. Like the beginning of you think in a movie with that premise that it's like, and the final act is he's going to do Christmas. But again, no, it begins, we establish who he is, and then like 10, 15 minutes in, his son is over for Christmas, and then Tim Allen startles Santa on the roof, whereupon he falls off the roof to his death.
Yeah.
Santa fully dies.
Tonally crazy.
Tonally insane.
Totally nuts.
Tim Allen seems to immediately get that this is Santa and is trying to hide the fact from his son by putting on the Santa suit, and then they get in the sleigh, whereupon it takes them to another house. So he just starts being Santa?
Yeah. And then he spends a year in denial, not thinking he will really be Santa after going to the North Pole.
They go to the North Pole where David Krumholtz is like, fuck you, you're Santa.
Yeah, I'm Bernard the head elf.
Because of the legalese, the Santa Claus, right? Which is, again, crazy because this world is one in which you become Santa via trial by combat.
Yes, and clearly, as I said, it's like the Dread Pirate Roberts of Santas. That's the vibe of it. And as I did
they like the previous Santa? Their friend just died.
None of them gave a shit. They were like, "Oh, he's dead."
Yeah,
no worries. They loved this Tim Allen Santa so much. If he died, it turns out that they'd just be like, "Cool, bring in the next one."
Tim Allen comes back to the North Pole, and none of them go like, "Where's Kyle?"
Yeah,
like what happened to Oh my God, no.
Wouldn't that make you question if you're the next Santa? You'd be like, these guys act like they're my best friends, but they wouldn't give a shit if I fell off a roof and died. I know that for a fact.
Well, as we learn in the
Maybe
second one,
horrible.
He's also required to have a wife who is not there in the North Pole. So I think it's a thing where when Santa dies, his wife like bursts into ashes and dissolves. So they were already warned.
So like every movie has that premise of like, there's a clause. The first one is the Santa Claus. If you put on his jacket after you kill Santa, you'll become Santa Claus. The second one is that there's a clause in the contract that they didn't read, which is that he has to have a Mrs. Claus.
The Mrs. Claus. And I will say the first two movies, I think the pun is actually pretty solid.
And you can tell that the first movie, someone was like, Santa Claus, there's a pun in that. How could we make that a movie? What would the plot of that pun be? And that, I swear to God, that's how it happened.
For sure. And then the second one, they the way that every character delivers the Mrs. Claus, you know that like whatever person was pitching that to a studio, like were so fucking proud of themselves.
And I have to say, the differences between the first one's like not too bad, but has a crazy premise. The second one has a crazy premise and is that bad.
It is, I think, the most entertaining and most insane of the three.
Absolutely. Because of the clone Santa Claus.
Yeah, because of fascist Robo-Santa.
Yeah, exactly, the Robo-Santa.
Yeah.
I mean, just to give you some brief information about the films before Santa Claus 3 as well. So the first Santa Claus, as we mentioned, made in 1994. And it was written by Leo Benvenuti and Steve Rudnick, and those two guys wrote Space Jam.
Oh, and I believe that. I fully believe that.
And it was directed by John Pasquin, and John Pasquin directed my favorite movie as a kid. It was called Jungle to Jungle. Mm-hmm. It had Tim Allen, and it had Martin Short in it.
Oh, wow.
And it was about like this kid. It's actually horrible. This guy finds out that a woman he was dating that like works in Africa had a child, and he finds out he has a 13-year-old son that is like basically living in this tribe in Africa, and he brings him to New York City, and it's from jungle to jungle. He has to learn about the concrete jungle.
So it's George of the Jungle, but it's a child?
Yeah, and I was obsessed with that movie. Every time we'd go to Blockbuster, I would rent it out, like every week.
So you're telling me the guy that directed Kid George of the Jungle and the guys that wrote What If Michael Jordan Went to Hell Where the Looney Tunes Live...
They had a baby.
For fear of being slaves... They made the movie in which Tim Allen accidentally kills and becomes Santa in the way that you would, say, a werewolf.
Yeah.
Cool. That all makes sense to me.
It all checks out,
It all checks out.
So that was the first one. And then the second one came out in 2002, 8 years later.
That explains so much.
The kid that plays his son Charlie. And by the way, the kid that plays Charlie in the first movie is so fucking cute. He's
great in the first one.
But he grows up and he's a 16-year-old by the time of the 2002 sequel. Yeah. And he's a bad boy now.
Yeah, including where there's the sort of like pop rock song.
When he's spray painting.
Yeah. We're singing Deck the Halls.
I really thought as she's staring down at him smiling and as the music's building, they'd cut away. But it was just a really long sequence about him graffitiing. The Santa Claus 2 came out in 2002 and it was directed by Michael Lembeck in his directorial debut.
Okay.
Michael Lembeck hasn't really done anything of note, but he did do the Santa Claus 3.
Okay, because it smacks of like internal like TV hire, you know?
Yeah, he's not very notable. And with Santa Claus 3, this came out in 2006, so 3 years after the second one. It was directed by Michael Lembeck, and it was written by Ed Decter and John J. Strauss, who were the duo that wrote Lizzie McGuire, the movie.
Oh,
the Lizzie McGuire movie.
Okay,
so that's fun.
That is fun, I guess.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah.
And cast-wise, for the third film at least, you've got Tim Allen playing Santa Claus, or Scott Calvin.
Yeah.
You've got Martin Short playing Jack Frost. Truly the best performance in the movie.
I mean, honestly, when watching it, I was like, this movie sucks and everyone is so flat in it. But Martin Short is so clearly underutilized as an actor in kids' movies, and you can see it best in that.
He brings so much Alan Cummings energy from Spy Kids.
Yeah. Well, hey, whoa. It's the other way around. Martin Short was around before. Alan Cumming is bringing Martin Short energy to Spy Kids.
All right. And
fuck you, Abigail.
You've got Elizabeth Mitchell playing Mrs. Claus. You've got Judge Reinhold playing Neil Miller. Judge Reinhold is the craziest name.
I know, it's insane. But who I always just think of that bit in Arrested Development that my name is Judge.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he goes from, in the first one, like, what is meant to be the stereotypical yuppie psychologist who's like cold and logical to, in the third one, clearly something got lost in the fucking like game of whispers.
Totally different.
Because now they play a sitar every time he has a scene, and it's weirdly
and he's
uncomfortable.
so into the North Pole. He's like the biggest fan of Santa Claus. He's just done a 180. But hey, how much time has elapsed? Like, what?
But when we see
11 years?
When we see Jack Frost's alternate reality,
12?
he should be like psychologist who thinks that Santa is nothing. He shouldn't be like pro North Pole.
Then you've got Alan Arkin playing Carol's father, Bud Newman. You've got Anne Margaret playing Sylvia Newman. I looked her up because I'd never heard of Anne Margaret, but she was like a 60s sex symbol.
Oh, cool.
She's Swedish and American. You've got Spencer Breslin playing Curtis.
Yeah.
Spencer Breslin from Cat in the Hat.
He gets introduced in the second one. He's in Cat in the Hat, and also we saw him in Zoom. He's the brother of Abigail Breslin from Little Miss Sunshine. She was in this movie as a student. Just the first time she was in one of them was at the very beginning and then at the very end.
Yeah. Also, Spencer Breslin, crazy. Did you know he married Grace Tame at one point?
No.
Like the Grace Tame.
Yeah, like Australian of the Year.
Yeah, they were married.
So weird.
They're divorced, but they were married.
Okay.
Two worlds that you wouldn't expect to collide.
Not at all would I have
Short-lived
expected.
marriage.
What? Okay.
And then you've got Aisha Tyler playing Mother Nature, Peter Boyle playing Father
great.
Time.
Well,
Yeah.
but he's also in the first one as his boss.
As his boss. They don't mention it at all. They just bring him back.
It's not like a Wizard of Oz thing. It's just he's just there. And David Krumholtz couldn't come back, apparently.
No. He was too busy on numbers at this point.
Well, my theory is that because we see him, Bernard is one of my favorite characters in the first two because he's really given. And in the first one, David Krumholtz is still a kid and he's doing a really great job of being like, I'm running the place. Shut up. All right. I'll teach you how to be Santa. Don't worry about it.
I mean, he can't come back. He's a fucking adult now. Like at this point,
well, but
12 years had elapsed.
At the same time, like, it feels very much like elves just don't get promoted because if anyone should have been the new Santa, it should have been him, right?
They don't do internal hires.
So my theory is that in the first two movies, he's like training every day Rocky style for his like day, and in between 2 and 3 he like comes out into the workshop and challenges Santa to the ancient rite of combat, and he loses. Tim Allen must rip off his head.
I love the idea of him working really hard as head elf, and when that last Santa dies, he's like, oh my god, this is my shot, and they're like, we're actually going to do an external hire here, and he's like, fuck it, I'm quitting.
Well, that's why he's going to kill Santa.
The death clause.
The death clause.
It's the final Santa Claus installment. Here's the overview of Santa Claus 3.
Okay.
Because we've gone through roughly what 1 and 2 are about.
No, we have not gone through what 2 is about, and we have to at some point.
Okay, let's go through it now quickly.
Okay,
just a brief synopsis.
Because it's my favorite.
Because the first one, as we've mentioned, is about him killing Santa Claus, becoming Santa Claus, and him kind of fixing his relationship with his son, Charlie.
It's mostly scenes of him being surprised that he's fat now.
And surprised that his hair's getting white.
Every other adult in the movie going, your son believes in Santa, that's deeply concerning us.
That's the first film.
And then the second one.
Please, Michelle.
Santa is introduced as a military leader. Before quickly something's going wrong. And whereupon the elves have to remind him, well, there is actually an extra piece of legalese that you weren't made aware of, the Mrs. Clause, where you have to get married. No extra details are given. It just says he has to get married, and that for some reason means he has to get married within 35 days, even though it's been like 8 years or whatever.
I think it was 28 days.
28 days. It was like, it was a little less than a month. Don't know why. So he has to get fully married. Notably, in my opinion, doesn't say anything about has to fall in love.
Yeah.
This is a key loophole that Tim Allen did not exploit.
A Mrs. Claus.
He just needs someone who is willing to live with him in the North Pole.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway, so he reversed Tim. He turns back into Tim Allen over the course of the 28 days.
Yeah.
And
because now he's back on Earth and he's running out of time.
He's running out of his magic.
Yeah.
To maintain the illusion that Santa is there, I guess. It's really squishy why. He has to leave, it's Spencer Breslin's idea. He leaves a like plastic robot toy Santa who, being a fresh-born robot, is clearly born with fascistic tendencies that only increase over time. But we'll come back to him. Right? Eventually he stages a military coup of the North Pole.
Yeah.
So Tim Allen goes back to the rest of the planet and, catches up with his ex-wife and his son, where he's disappointed that his son is on the naughty list now because he did some mild graffiti.
Yeah.
It's very authoritarian.
His son has a principal that's telling him off for the graffiti.
Yes.
Carol Newman.
Who is a hard ass with a heart of gold who will rapidly lose her personality in the third movie.
100%.
But yeah, he starts like dating other women, including Molly Shannon, who he's like, oh, she sings? Fuck that. I mean, if I don't do this, there's not going to be Christmas anymore, but I can't fucking deal with it if she wants to sing. So he continues trying to find people to date, which mostly involves him not doing that. And then he starts wooing the principal, who he does have a romantic connection with, and like gets all the other teachers' presents and shit. And eventually, like his son gets to go like, I hate having to keep secrets that my dad is Santa.
Oh, the storyline with the son in the second one is wild. He like bursts into tears and he's like, my dad has the greatest job in the world and I can't tell anyone about it.
I would say it's the only time in the trilogy that anyone actually talks about the ramifications of Tim Allen becoming Santa. And then they brush over it completely.
Well, at the end of the film, he's like, it's our secret. It's the family secret.
It's the family secret. And there's also like their little like stepdaughter now, Lucy, who is...
Neil and his ex-wife have another kid or a new kid.
Who immediately catches on that Scott is Santa. But, they try and like tell her, they're like, shut the fuck up, all right? He's not Santa. Don't worry about it. Eventually, he does woo the principal, although she gets very upset when he confesses that he is Santa.
She's really bothered by it.
She had a real like cut memory of Santa, and she thinks that he's making fun of her.
Yeah,
is only convinced when the son comes up to her and is like, hey, if your only problem with my dad is that you don't believe in him, which is the funniest phrasing I can think of. But Scott finally heads back to Santa, to the North Pole, because... as mentioned previously, Robo-Santa has staged a military coup of the North Pole to force all the elves to make coal? He has it. I guess it's to wrap coal.
I lost a grasp of the plot at a certain point in the second one.
So did the writers. But he makes it to the North Pole. So does the principal. I forget how. Whereupon they try and stop Robo-Santa. They just narrowly manage to. It's crazy. They all fight back, mostly with snowballs. So once they stop that, then they like Tim Allen literally turns to the principal and is like, oh, I almost forgot. I need to marry you. And she's like, what? And then he's like, yeah, it is a legal thing, but I do also love you.
And then she does it. She just does it.
Yeah, because it's been 28 days and he says, I love you. Will you marry me? And she goes, this is really fast. And then he goes, well, if you don't, there will be no more Christmas.
Yeah.
Which really puts her in a hard position.
Yeah.
So she agrees because otherwise there wouldn't be Christmas at all. I don't know why he needs to be legally bound in matrimony to be Santa.
There has to be a clause, Michelle. Let me give you the overview of the third one.
Yeah, that's
going to be shorter than the second one.
No, yeah. Well, but that's because a lot less happens.
Carol, now Mrs. Claus, is pregnant. Under the guise of it being Canada, Scott brings his in-laws to the North Pole, along with his ex-wife Laura, her husband Neil, their daughter Lucy, and Scott's son Charlie. Meanwhile, Jack Frost has been treading on Santa's toes, but convinces Scott to let him help up at the North Pole. However, Frost's ultimate goal is to trick Santa into renouncing his position. When he learns of the escape clause, which, by the way, I didn't put in the overview, but just so people know, if you hold a snow globe, that reflects when Santa became Santa. If he holds it, if Santa puts his hand over it and says, I wish I never became Santa Claus, he'll go back in time to the moment he became Santa Claus.
And not and then not be Santa. He just goes back to that moment.
And that's the escape clause. And so once Frost hears about that, he invokes it upon Scott, and both are sent back in time to the moment Scott became Santa. Frost becomes Santa instead. Scott awakens in the modern day as a lonely businessman who has lost his family. Very It's a Wonderful Life.
It's reverse It's a Wonderful Life, right?
Scott returns to the North Pole, now a theme park, and confronts Frost. He invokes the escape clause again and becomes Santa. Scott opens up to his parents-in-law, telling them he is Santa. Carol and he have the baby.
Yeah.
The end.
With a heavy implication that like they're like, now we have a real family. even though Scott already has a son.
Did they say that?
No, but that's like the whole vibe is like, I'm so excited for us to finally have a family here. And Scott already has a child.
Yeah, it's just that he doesn't live with the child because he's a terrible, negligent parent.
Well, now it's because he's Santa Claus.
I love how, I do hate that the storyline for Carol in the third one is just, Santa's so busy at Christmas time. Why can't he make time for his family? Like, her whole character is...
All personality is completely sucked out of her to nagging wife.
She's a hard ass in the second one. She has a cool personality.
She's a career woman.
Yeah, and in the third one, she's just a pregnant, whiny wife.
Yeah. She's all smiles. She looks like she's on a ton of Xanax.
Yeah.
Like, she's doped out of her mind.
Honey.
Wow, honey.
I just want my parents to come.
To be fair, she has nothing to do for the entirety of the year.
Yeah.
And then in the months around Christmas, her husband completely ignores her.
I would get pretty lonely in in the North Pole as well.
I don't understand why she has to live in the North Pole.
Because she wants to be with her husband.
Right, but he even kind of states in the second one that after Christmas he'll be able to have a 3-month honeymoon.
They could take 3 months off and go live in the real world.
Yeah.
And then come back.
I mean, the first movie, he has a full year to get his affairs in order.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's doing for most of the year.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I do love, as you say, the concept of like, here's this magical thing. What if we put rules and regulations around it?
Yeah.
Isn't that magical?
Rules, I'm like... okay with because they're like magic rules, but like when it's a legal document, there's something really funny about that.
You know what's like what film is the opposite of like Christmas magic rules?
Yeah.
Polar Express.
Yes.
And it's just because there's so many questions that you have about Polar Express that they're like, we don't need to answer that.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. Why is a train coming through? The train wasn't there.
Well, trains are just like that. There's no rules on trains.
Does the conductor sound like Santa Claus? Why does Santa Claus sound like older protagonist boy? Like, there's a lot of open-ended questions. There's a lot of magic in the Polar Express. And they're like, we don't need to explain shit to you.
Yeah, and they don't. It's
Christmas.
Whereas the Santa Claus is like, what Santa is about like eldritch fey legal documentation. They are fairy tricks, right? I don't understand because in the second one it introduces the pantheon, which by the way, my theory, Westerners and especially Americans we're begging for a pantheon.
Yeah,
we're begging for it. If Santa, a folk god, is the best example. He is the exact same thing as like ancient pantheon folk god.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? And so then they introduce the pantheon of, it's my favorite pantheon I can imagine, Mother Earth, Father Time, Santa, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, the Sandman, and then there's one more, isn't there? Oh, and Cupid. And then the third one, it says Jack Frost is also there and has been the whole time, where his main gripe is that he doesn't get a holiday.
Yeah.
Even though they're not all holiday creatures. But, I mean, he's also, I guess like Jack Frost is just winter.
Mother Nature and Father Time don't get holidays.
And
the Tooth Fairy doesn't get a holiday.
Also, they have far more expansive powers than like fucking Cupid and the Easter Bunny do.
That's why they govern all the meetings, don't they? Aren't they meant to be like the matriarch and patriarch?
Because they're God.
Yeah.
Right? Like Mother Nature and Father Time are the gods who created like space and time. Yeah. And then Cupid makes people fuck. These are not the same.
But Valentine's Day.
Sure, but the Easter Bunny, I know he's related to a holiday, but like
Easter.
I wouldn't put him in the same pantheon as like the spirit of the earth herself and the one who oversees time and winter
of like holiday mascots. That makes sense.
But that's not what it is.
But that's not what it is because Jack Frost is just part of a season.
He is winter, I guess.
Winter,
he is winter. There are no other seasonal gods.
Yeah. Also, I love that Jack Frost at the end gets thawed by Lucy's hugs.
Where he turns into like a southern evangelical reverend.
He like has like a white suit and black hair. And I'm like, did they just erase Jack Frost? Like, does that mean that like the frost won't come each winter? What are the ramifications of thawing out Jack Frost?
The god of winter is gone.
So therefore it's eternally summer.
Yeah, I guess.
Does that fuck up Mother Nature? Is she like, holy shit, my schedule is fucked. Like I need Jack Frost back pronto.
Maybe what's happened is that he no longer has powers. Yeah. And so, because repeatedly they state they can't intervene with each other's domain.
Yeah.
so now maybe it like falls back under Mother Nature.
It bothers me because Jack Frost's whole shtick is being cold and frosty.
Yeah.
They took away his entire identity. They made it as if his entire identity was a problem. It's not the fact that he's cold and wintry. The problem is that he's malicious and conniving. But they just erased all of him and made him a completely different guy. It's not problematic.
It's not like in The Grinch, he learns how to love and then turns into a beautiful, regular human.
Yeah.
No.
That would be like if Shrek at the end, he did turn Fiona into like the normal looking princess.
And in turn turned into a handsome man.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
it's the equivalent.
So fucked up.
I just think that climate-wise, throwing out Jack Frost is just going to make a whole ton of issues.
We can actually trace back climate change
to Santa
Claus 3.
To 2006 Christmas when Lucy gave Jack Frost a warm hug.
Yeah, we need Santa Claus 4, the climate clause.
Michelle, that mulled wine was strong. I feel like sleepy.
Yeah.
There was a lot of brandy that I also put into it.
Maybe you've just got Jack Frost nipping at your toes. Which was like the best scene where he insists. He's like clearly trying to smash Mrs. Claus's mum.
Yeah.
And he gets really upset when she moves on in that song from that line. And so she, without questioning, kind of just sings that line repeatedly.
Yeah. Yeah. The weird sexual tension between Jack Frost and Anne Margaret in Santa Claus 3 was wild.
All of this talk about Jack Frost, who I want to come back to. Actually, no, we should, because I can come back to what I was going to talk to. Because we haven't talked about his version of the North Pole, a commerce nightmare, his theme park. Like,
I love how, like, in a nightmare world, he's commercialized the North Pole.
Oh, yeah, fully. Which I feel like it takes after It's a Wonderful Life, where, like, Pottersville looks like a capitalist nightmare.
Yeah.
And the lesson we take away from it is still that capital should be great. But he doesn't have a wife unless he keeps her in a locked room. Which is kind of what I thought when, like, Lucy was going to, going through the Red Bull, the Red Deer drink vending machine. I was like, is she going to find Jack Frost's wife?
Oh, my God.
Who, by the way, Jack Frost fully murders her parents.
He does. He freezes them.
He freezes them to death.
It's scary. And to be honest, Lucy's reaction to it was quite an understatement. If I was a kid and I watched my parents get frozen, I wouldn't say, "What are you doing? Stop it." My first question would be like, did you kill them? Are they dead? Did you kill my parents?
Because I know at the end, like, he turns out that he kind of can take it back, but, like, they're fully frozen. They're dead.
He can take it back, but if he takes it back, he has to get thawed out. And he does.
He does.
Again, the reason he doesn't want to do that is that it's his whole identity.
Yeah.
It's who he is.
I think the ending should have been like, we'll forgive you, but you do have to serve, honey, you're going to jail for murdering 2 people.
I feel like it's almost like when he got thawed out by Lucy, he got lobotomized. He looked like a shell of the man he once was.
Yeah, it does kind of scream lobotomy.
He's just like smiley all the time.
He goes, wow, yeah. He really loses all that pizzazz he's got going. Because he's a showman. He sings New York, New York, but it's North Pole, North Pole. And you know what? This movie sucks, but that I thought was a pretty fun time.
Martin Short's really fun. Martin Short's really funny.
I also think gags about New York are great because it's both a great song and a really funny song, especially to recontextualize.
Do you remember that bit in 30 Rock where there's that woman being like, "I love New York in springtime," and she gets like kicked into a dumpster.
Yeah. And she gets smashed, flying into the rubbish. Yeah.
Better Days.
Yeah, Better Days. But yeah, he's a real fucking showman, and the North Pole is all about it. Where he even confesses he turned it into a theme park with like Tim Allen is like, "Why'd you do this?" And he's like, running it seems hard. I don't care. And he also does all of the voiceover, like the PA work. And I love the idea of like Jack Frost Santa in a booth, like recording lines for it.
We'll just have to get a third take, Mr. Frost. Oh, Mr. Santa.
Mr. Santa.
Mr. Santa. Oh my God, Michelle.
Mr. Santa.
That mulled wine's fucking me up. Were there any big major points that you want to touch on before I get into trivia?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, in particular, the major thing that I wanted to talk about that we haven't yet is the fucking reindeer. One of whom I know was voiced by Kath Soucie, who was like Phil and Lil in the Rugrats and like Lola Bunny. Because, see, I recognized her because unlike you, I actually like respect and acknowledge voice actors' work.
We do differ in that area, don't we?
And I think it's funny because there's also another one whose voice I couldn't quite pick. And it's literally like the Kath Soucie plays the really young one. And the direction they gave her was clearly like, I don't care what noises you make, just make as many of them as you can, because the reindeer will be like running around and she's like,
the reindeer are really sinister in this.
Yeah.
They're genuinely intimidating. They growl at him a lot.
They do. Well, the main one, who I think is Comet.
Yeah, Comet.
Yeah. Just sounds like Jabba the Hutt, because there's one line in the second one in particular where he's talking to Comet and then he goes back, and I'm like, what the fuck?
It's an inspired choice to make Comet the lead reindeer as well. Like, why not Rudolph? Where
Why
they're
not?
like, let's not be mainstream.
And to have a young one that then isn't Rudolph.
Yeah,
like
to get on their high horse and be like, you know what, Rudolph is overdone.
I think it's Chet instead. Like,
stupid.
It's so weird.
Chet's a good name.
But why are the reindeer? Because in the first one, the reindeer just make regular deer sounds. And the second one, they're like, fuck it. It's now Jabba the Hutt and the kids from Rugrats.
What I found out through some of the trivia that I have, or the goofs that I have, is that the people that did the second and third one did not give a fuck about continuity between the second and third and the first film.
Of course not.
Not at all. So there's a lot of choices that they made where they were like, you know how we set up this kind of atmosphere and vibe in the first film? Fuck it.
Oh, yeah. That tonal whiplash between the first one and the second one. Before you move on to trivia, there is one other major thing that will be me telling you something, which is the Santa Clauses.
Oh, yeah. What was the Santa Clauses like?
Okay, so I watched the first episode and a half. Listeners, I'm so sorry. I wanted to watch more, but genuinely couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Couldn't make it through it.
No.
It's really quite abysmal. If it was a movie, it should be on this list.
Yeah.
Because it is, imagine the Santa Clauses, years later, it came out this year, with way more VFX that are way worse.
Yeah.
No one seems to care anymore.
Yeah.
And Tim Allen spends every opportunity taking swipes at modern progressive culture that he can.
Yeah.
There's weird jokes about, like Mrs. Claus is like, I'm losing my identity. What was my name? And what's my name? And he's like, oh, it's this. And she's like, that's my old name. And he's like, oh, or we're making this a whole thing. And it's like, is that a weird trans joke?
Oh.
And then there's jokes later of like, actually that's problematic to say that they're naughty. And then Tim Allen gets to roll his eyes and goes like, nowadays saying Christmas is problematic. And you're like,
no.
Oh, daddy's sleepy, huh? Maybe daddy should go to bed, huh? Instead of making a TV show.
Okay. This makes so much more sense. I've never seen Michelle's notes for any episode before. Like, we don't tend to see each other's notes.
Yeah.
But because her laptop was right in front of me, I saw the page of her notes briefly, and there was just one bullet point that said, Daddy sleepy. And I was like, what? How the fuck? How is that going to come into this conversation?
Daddy sleepy.
Now I know.
Yeah. Well, because in particular, the bit that really gets me... Because I watched 1.5 episodes, I said, and the reason for that is because the first episode finishes, and I was like, I have to watch the second episode because it seems like it's going to start with Tim Allen dying. Because he also falls off a roof.
Right.
And it features him as he's dying going like, I needed more time. I hope my wife does... No, he goes, I needed more time. There's so much left to do. I just hope my wife doesn't remarry. Those are his dying thoughts before his
I want her to never have happiness again.
Never.
Never.
By the way, he and Mrs. Claus come back.
Yeah.
No one else is the same, including he has 2 new kids now.
I'm actually shocked they got Mrs. Claus back, to be honest.
Have you seen her in anything else?
No.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think she's been in a bunch of American TV shows you and I don't enjoy.
I just don't think she's busy.
Yeah.
For the Santa Clauses.
Yeah.
So I will say up front, easily the worst of the series. Would give a miss.
Okay, I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear some trivia?
Yes, please.
IMDb trivia.
All right. I have to say the trivia for this sucked because a lot of them were just observations being
I hate when that's...
Yeah, it was just like things that we already saw. Like, this is a reference to this. And it's like, we get it. We got that.
I watched it.
It wasn't convoluted, I have 2 pieces of trivia, but I have 4 goofs. But the 2 pieces of trivia, one of them I've actually already mentioned, which is that Tim Allen and Martin Short previously starred in Jungle to Jungle together.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Here's one piece of trivia. The answer to, again, it's another observation. Mm-hmm. The answer to Mrs. Teacher Claus's math question is 3 hours. And then they go on to explain the problem. That's all I could pull out of the trivia section. You want to hear some goofs?
Yeah, I do.
Scott tells Cupid that at this altitude, you might want to consider an underdiaper, referring to the cold climate for a man in a toga. Altitude refers to elevation, not position on the globe. He meant latitude.
That is true. This person has written it in an incredibly wordy way,
Yeah.
but that is correct. True. I will say, maybe they are at a high elevation too, but he does mean latitude.
But aren't they also in a crevice in the ice? I swear they're in like a bowl, like a basin.
Well, at various times we see like in the second one we see a plane going near it, in which they're fucking terrified of being discovered.
Yeah, and I think they're in a crater because they're trying to not be discovered. So I don't think they're at high altitude.
Something that the first movie, by the way, doesn't give a shit about. They're like, Tim Allen's here. Oh, I don't fucking care.
Yeah. Here's 3 goofs that actually really highlight how little they gave a fuck about continuity with the first film.
Awesome.
When Scott tricks Santa Frost and they come back to the moment where Scott first becomes Santa, they watch as the younger Scott puts on the coat. This is impossible. Scott did not put the coat on and asked Charlie how he looked until they had landed on another rooftop. Frost and Scott would not have been able to watch this happen from their hiding place on the younger Scott's front lawn. Which is true. Like, it actually didn't happen that way in the first film.
Okay.
Here's another one. Lucy said that Scott gave Charlie the magic snow globe when it was Bernard who gave it to him in the first movie.
Yeah, that is true.
And here's another one. When the old Santa falls off the roof, he says, ho ho, uh-oh, which didn't happen in the original movie either. They just didn't give a fuck.
They didn't care. Which, by the way, I was really hoping in the scene where, Jack Frost and Scott go back to when Scott accidentally killed the first Santa.
Yeah.
And, then
that
Jack...
never weighed on his conscience, by the way.
No.
Being responsible for a man's death.
He was fully responsible for killing Santa.
What happened to the man's body on his front lawn?
Well, we see it like evaporates, right? Which is why I'm pretty sure that must have happened to Mrs. Claus as well. When they come back, because Jack can only come because he's touching Santa, which is a really funny magic loophole in my opinion. When they come back the second time, I'm half expecting Scott to like choke out Jack. Shh.
Do you want to hear some reviews?
Yes, please.
Reviews!
On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 17%. The site's critical consensus reads, playing Jack Frost as an evil cross between Liza Minnelli and Liberace, Martin Short is a welcoming presence, but this tired series continues drawing from its bag of bland gags and dumb slapsticks.
Okay, there's 100% correct description of Martin Short in this.
Liza Minnelli and Liberace. Yeah. Liberace in particular. I'm seeing it.
I'm so mad that of the 3 amigos, Chevy managed to have a solid career in the 80s and Martin Short less so. Because
Chevy Chase,
Martin Short is incredible.
He's way funnier.
And Chevy never deserved it.
Chevy became popular because he was tall and had a good chin, and people were like, let's make this man a star.
Yeah, and I think at that point, being angry as a young man, people were like, ha ha ha, and then as an old man, you're like, God, you're fucking
still
intolerable.
Angry? Grow up. Yeah. Enid D. Snyder wrote that Alan did the Santa Claus the first time with enthusiasm, the second time with affection, and the third time for a paycheck. Kyle Smith wrote, we're getting a turkey and a ham for the holidays. Santa is so dumb he should be demoted to cleaning up after Jeffrey the Giraffe at Toys R Us. It was also nominated for a bunch of Golden Raspberry Awards. It was nominated for it was nominated for Worst Actor, Worst Screen Couple, which was Tim Allen and Martin Short. Worst Supporting Actor for Martin Short. Worst Prequel or Sequel, and Worst Excuse for Family Entertainment.
Whoa, that's harsh.
That's
also,
harsh.
Worst Supporting Actor for Martin Short.
I know.
He's great. He's doing a good job in this.
Yeah. I love that the screen couple was Martin Short and Tim Allen, and not Tim Allen and Elizabeth Mitchell. Is that her name?
Well, they're not really a couple.
Yeah.
They don't love each other.
She's not allowed to remarry.
She, at one point, because they knock over a tree and smash a Christmas ornament that fully seems to break her spirit.
Yeah.
I didn't know that particular ornament, if it had a special connection, but it seems to break her spirit in a way that, like, I think a lot of women watching can relate to, where you're like trying to not cry more even though you're crying because you're like, I cannot take it anymore.
Yeah. Here's a review left by Ruski in 2018. It's a 10 out of 10 review, and it's called Reba Stole the Show.
What?
Reba stole the show.
But, okay, hey, maybe the review will contextualize it.
Do you know who Reba is?
The country singer?
Reba McEntire?
Yeah.
Was she in this movie?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's why I was very confused.
At first, I wasn't sure what to think about Santa Claus 3, the escape clause. But when Reba McEntire was introduced as Mrs. Claus' mother, my jaw hit the floor. While that was a great little Easter egg...
That's
just not her.
It's also not what an Easter egg is having an actor.
Okay, a cameo is what you mean. The real story is in the redemption arc of Jack Frost. This brought a small glimmer of light to my dark soul.
Whoa.
A complete story of love, loss, and then love again. Thank you, Tim Allen. Thank you for giving us this gift this Christmas.
We have found the precise point on the scale of a big enough fan of Reba that her appearance vastly improves your opinion of the film, but not enough of a fan to recognize her. Yeah.
And here is a review left by Blonde HQ. Just a few days ago. Called The Santa Clauses movie series comes to Disney Plus, so I had to see all 3 parts, which led to ... That's the subject.
Jesus.
Last week, I wrote a review for the second part. 2 weeks before. Yeah, you're right. For first one. Haha. Yeah, me and my reindeers took a slow ride. First one got 9. Second was and still after this one, the best. And my favorite with 10. This one is 9 too. But because of bad rating, I have to give 10. In the end, why complain? They're all different with different stories. Every good on its own. Here we got bad Jack Frost. He done his thing in a great way. And Santa and the rest, they were in their problems. It was focus on, and they did it. And it has not one, many, many great messages. You just need to see. In the end, actually, after movie finished, oh my God, that behind the scenes, I laughed.
Is this...
Thank you. My acting funny to you? Ha ha. And in the end, my favorite holidays franchise, and without doubt, Tim is my Santa Claus. My reindeers, next up, Disney Plus Santa Claus series. Let's see this with today's effects, CGI, etc. 10 out of 10.
Is this an unfilled Mad Lib?
It was... I need everyone to know that was broken down sentence by sentence with big spaces in between, as in a poem that was separated line by line.
This person's having insane. Some sort of episode.
Oh, they're having a stroke while they're watching the Santa Claus.
I don't think we need to entertain.
They're having a stroke this festive season. Well, that was Blonde HQ's review, Michelle. What was your review of Santa Claus 3?
Well, I think a big knock against the movie is how, I understand that Mrs. Claus's plight of, she has to spend all year where there's only one other human being. However, she doesn't seem to fixate so much on the fact that they aren't people, so much as the fact that they're short.
Yeah.
Including when her parents arrive, she screams out, "Tall people!" I don't like that.
It is weird because it's if the only difference is being tall and short, are you still getting the same emotional depth and maturity out of the elves? Therefore, does it matter?
Well, I think the way that she's talking about them shows that she's not really engaging them as if they're people.
She's treating them like children.
I think she's kind of brought this upon herself somewhat. So, I don't know. On the one hand, the first half of this movie is so much more boring than it needs to be, especially compared to the fucking entertaining masterpiece of Santa Claus 2.
First half was quite normal, but that second half went fucking
normal but
batshit.
Slow.
It was slow.
And then that second half, especially the third act, balls to the walls insane. Absolutely incredible. We need more Jack Frost. What I needed instead of the Santa Clauses was the Jack Frosts. That would have been incredible. I'm gonna roll them together. With Santa Claus 1, I'd give it probably, I don't know, it's like a 7. It's a movie.
7 out of 10 for Santa Claus 1.
It's 6.5.
We're going crazy.
6.5. It's not bad. It's a movie and it's charming, right? But at the same time, it's insane and we don't talk about it enough. The second movie, I can't give it higher. God damn it. I'm going to have to give it a 6 because it's really bad, but it's really entertaining.
It is very entertaining.
I would fully watch it. My darling girlfriend, Brooke, really fucking hates watching these movies with me. She willingly watched the Santa Claus 2 with me and had a good time.
Oh.
Right? So that's a good indication of that it's entertaining.
Yeah.
The third one, is maybe like a 4. It's still mostly a movie, but it's really more dull than it needs to be. I also watched the first 20 minutes of Noel because when on Disney Plus I went to the Santa Claus section, it was there. It is not related at all. It's just an Anna Kendrick Christmas movie that came out in 2019. It's not great. It's just really bland.
Why did you watch it?
Because it was in the collection. It took me a while, and then I looked it up. It has nothing to do with the Santa Claus. I was mistaken.
You were fucking misled.
And I was so frustrated. But based on that first 30, I'd say a pure 5. There is no traits about it I could describe. Yeah, pure 5. I could not tell you a single trait about it. It is a nothing film.
That's crazy.
We could swap it out for a good year with Noel. It's just nothing. The Santa Clauses, maybe a 2.5. I really hated it.
So where are we getting at with the total round score?
Oh, what's the average of that? Maybe
Dude,
that's like a 4.8 or something overall for the franchise.
Yeah. For the franchise, for me,
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a... I love good Christmas films, but like once you see the Muppet Christmas Carol, it's over for any other Christmas film. Plus, I find Tim Allen, as much as I joke about him being a great guy to chat to, I find him a very unlikable actor.
Yeah.
Didn't like the world that they set up. Didn't care much for the like I wouldn't watch it for the atmosphere and the Christmassy vibes. I'd just watch it because it's batshit.
Yeah.
And for that reason, it wasn't good, and I probably wouldn't watch it again ever. So I'm probably gonna give it like a 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can see I'm still trying to actively combat that average going up.
Even though
and
this
up and
doesn't
up.
come into it, you're trying to combat it.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Guys, hey, we're on social media. You should follow us.
Yeah.
We're on Twitter under Rate Descend Pod. We're on TikTok under Rating Descending, or you can email us at ratingdescending@gmail.com.
Or if you want to catch up with us or talk to us individually, we're on our own social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at michelle.stclair.
And I'm on Instagram under Abigail J. Ward.
And if you got some particular chucks, some particular hearty guffaws from this, I would implore you to leave a review wherever you get your podcasts.
Please. Please.
Pretty please.
Please.
Oh, please.
Oh, please. Can I have some more?
Please leave us a review.
Well, that was the Santa Claus 3.
That was it. Yeah.
And we're not watching... Well, I mean, this is a bonus episode, so
Yeah.
fuck you guys. We don't need to explain what we're doing next week.
Merry Christmas, fuck you. I
Yeah.
don't need to explain myself. It's Christmas.
Suck a fucking merry cock.
Yeah, and I'm gonna open my
As mentioned.
fucking present. Suck a merry fucking cock. That's my gift for
Motherfucker.
Christmas.